The auction hall on Kepler Station smelled like recycled air and greed. Sarah Chen stood near the back wall, her tablet displaying lot numbers and estimated values. Around her, aliens of every description filled the seats. Vrin crime bosses with their scaled skin and cold eyes. Corporate executives from a dozen worlds. Salvage barons who made fortunes from other people's failures. Today they were all here for the same reason. The Vrin Syndicate had collapsed 3 months ago. Galactic authorities had seized everything the criminal organization owned. Now it was time to sell it all. Sarah watched the numbers climb on the display board. A luxury yacht went for 8 million credits. An armed freighter sold for 12 million. Every ship that came up for auction sparked a bidding war. These people wanted their piece of the Syndicate's remains. Lot 17, the auctioneer announced. His voice boomed through the hall. Heavy cruiser. Vrin military design. Designation forgotten price. A hologram appeared above the stage. The ship looked impressive enough. Dark hull plating covered every surface. The design was blocky and aggressive. Sarah leaned forward slightly. Triple armored hull, the auctioneer continued. Redundant systems throughout. Full military specification. Around the hall, salvagers pulled up their own scans. Sarah did the same. Her tablet showed the ship's details. Then she saw the assessments other buyers had made. They were all negative. Outdated engines, someone muttered behind her. Look at that armor configuration, another voice said. Complete waste of materials. Sarah scrolled through the technical readout. The ship had 3 layers of armor plating where one would do. The engines were an older model, inefficient compared to modern designs. The life support system was unnecessarily complex. Everything about the ship seemed wrong. The bidding should have been fierce. This was a Syndicate vessel. These criminals had owned the best ships credits could buy. But the auction hall stayed quiet. Opening bid, 5 million credits, the auctioneer said. Silence. 4 million? Nothing. Sarah felt something stir in her mind. A question. Why would the Vrin Syndicate keep a ship like this? They were ruthless and efficient. They didn't waste resources. Yet here was a vessel that seemed designed to waste everything. 3 million. The auctioneer's voice carried a hint of desperation now. A Gathrian salvager in the front row laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. That ship isn't worth the fuel in its tanks. Other aliens joined in the mockery. Sarah heard a dozen languages, but the message was clear. The forgotten price was junk. The hull alone should be valuable, the auctioneer tried. Triple-plated waste, someone shouted back. You'd spend more cutting through it than the metal is worth. Sarah ran calculations on her tablet. The ship was big. Even as scrap, it should sell for something. But the technical assessment was brutal. The armor was over-engineered. The power systems were inefficient. The whole vessel looked like someone had deliberately made it as impractical as possible. That question grew louder in her mind. Why? 1 million credits, the auctioneer said. His enthusiasm was gone. The hall stayed silent. Sarah looked around. Hardened criminals and corporate raiders all shook their heads. Some had already started talking among themselves, waiting for the next lot. 500,000. Nothing. 100,000 credits. Surely someone wants a heavy cruiser for 100,000. Sarah's finger hovered over her tablet. She was a lieutenant commander in Earth's Revenue Investigation Division. Her job was finding hidden assets. The Syndicate had billions in credits hidden somewhere. Every investigator in the galaxy was looking for it. Everyone was focused on the expensive ships, the luxury yachts, the armed vessels. Nobody was looking at the ship everyone mocked. Maybe that was the point. Minimum bid, the auctioneer said. 7 credits. Old Earth currency equivalent. Sarah pressed the bid button. The auctioneer looked surprised. We have a bid. 7 credits to buyer 471. Heads turned. Sarah felt alien eyes on her. Her supervisor, a Vrin administrator named Kelth, stood up from his seat, 3 rows ahead. Chen, he said, His voice carried clearly. "What are you doing?" "Buying a ship, sir." Laughter rippled through the hall. Kelth's scales flushed darker, a sign of embarrassment among his people. "That vessel is worthless," Kelth said. "Then I'm only spending 7 credits to find out." The auctioneer looked between them. "Any other bids?" Silence answered him. Nobody else wanted the forgotten price. "Sold to buyer 471 for 7 credits. More laughter. Sarah completed the transaction on her tablet. 7 credits transferred from her personal account. The forgotten price was now hers. Kelth pushed through the row of seats to reach her. "This is foolish," he said. "You'll be responsible for parking fees, maintenance. The cost of storing that hulk will be more than your salary." "Regulations allow personal purchases at auction," Sarah said calmly. "Regulations assume intelligence," Kelth snapped. "You've just bought the most useless ship in the Syndicate fleet." "Maybe?" "There is no maybe. Look at the specifications. That ship is an insult to engineering. The Vryn who designed it should have been executed." Sarah met his eyes. "Then why did the Syndicate keep it?" Kelth paused. "What?" "The Vryn Syndicate operated for 40 years. They were efficient, ruthless. They didn't keep useless things. So why keep this ship?" "Perhaps they had no choice. Perhaps it was built before they knew better. The manifest says it was commissioned 8 years ago. They were at their peak. They could have scrapped it any time." Kelth's expression shifted. For a moment doubt crossed his face. Then he shook his head. "You're seeing patterns that don't exist. But you've made your purchase. Deal with the consequences." He left. Around the hall the auction continued. Sarah barely noticed. She was already pulling up everything she could find about the forgotten price. The ship had a strange history. It appeared in Syndicate records 8 years ago. No construction documents, no purchase orders. It just appeared fully built. After that it mostly sat in various dockyards. It rarely flew. When it did, the logs showed simple cargo runs between Syndicate holdings. Nothing important, nothing valuable. Just a useless ship doing useless work. Sarah scheduled a docking inspection for the next day. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the ship, about the Syndicate, about 7 credits. The next morning, she took a shuttle to the impound docks. The forgotten price sat in Bay 47. Up close, it looked even worse than the stand suggested. The hull plating was dull and scratched. Docking clamps held it in place like a prisoner. Sarah activated her scanner as she approached the airlock. "Check for hazards before boarding any seized vessel." The scanner beeped. She looked at the readout. Then she looked again. The ship's mass didn't match its volume. According to the scanner, the forgotten price weighed 30% more than it should. The difference was significant, thousands of tons that shouldn't exist. Sarah stood in front of the airlock. Her heart beat faster. 7 credits. Everyone said the ship was worthless. But what if they were wrong? She entered her new access code. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Sarah stepped inside the forgotten price, and the door closed behind her with a heavy clang that echoed through the empty corridors. The real investigation was about to begin. The corridors inside the forgotten price were cold and dark. Sarah's helmet light cut through the shadows as she walked. Emergency lighting flickered on as she moved, responding to her presence. The ship's systems were still active, running on reserve power. She needed help. 2 days later, her small team assembled in the docking bay. Diego Martinez was her first choice. He was a human engineer who specialized in salvage work. The third member was Krern, a Vethian. The insect-like alien had worked with humans before and didn't share the common prejudice against their methods. "This is your 7-credit purchase?" Diego asked, looking up at the ship. "Don't start," Sarah said. "I'm not judging. I'm impressed. It takes confidence to buy something everyone else thinks is garbage." Krern's antenna twitched. In Vethian body language, That meant curiosity. What are we looking for? I don't know yet. But this ship is 30% heavier than it should be. That mass is somewhere. I want to find it. They started with a complete scan. Diego set up portable scanning equipment in the main cargo bay. The machines hummed to life, sending waves of different frequencies through the ship's structure. Kryn monitored the readouts, while Sarah explored the ship's computer systems. The armor is definitely triple-layered, Diego said, studying his screen. But look at this. The spacing between layers is inconsistent. Sarah walked over. The scan showed the ship's hull in cross-section. Diego was right. Some sections had normal spacing. Others had gaps that seemed too wide. Hollow spaces? Sarah asked. Maybe, or filled with something the scanner can't read properly. Kryn clicked his mandibles. The life support system is strange too. It has redundant pathways that go nowhere. Dead ends in the ventilation system. Sarah pulled up the ship's original blueprints from the Syndicate files. She compared them to what the scans showed. They don't match. Someone modified this ship after it was built. Extensively, Diego added. These aren't small changes. This is a complete internal redesign. They worked for hours. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Every system that seemed inefficient or wasteful was actually hiding something. The triple armor created hidden compartments. The complex life support masked unusual power draws to concealed sections. The outdated engines had modern cores hidden inside their bulky casings. It's a puzzle box, Sarah said quietly. Diego looked up from his work. What? The whole ship. It's designed to look worthless, but every piece serves a purpose. We're just not seeing it correctly yet. Kryn's antenna straightened. In Vethian terms, that was agreement. A human perspective. What do you mean? Sarah asked. Vryn think in straight lines. Efficiency, direct solutions. This ship thinks differently. It uses misdirection, deception. Very human. Sarah felt something click in her mind. She accessed the Syndicate files again. The forgotten price appeared 8 years ago with no construction records. What if it wasn't built by the Syndicate? What if they seized it from someone? Who? Diego asked. Sarah searched through the files. 8 years ago, Syndicate raids, human colonies. Then she found it. A small notation in a captured cargo manifest. One human accountant, taken from a mining colony. Name? Marcus Webb. They had a human working for them, Sarah said. An accountant. Marcus Webb, taken 8 years ago. Diego's expression darkened. Forced labor. The Syndicate used specialists from species they conquered. Humans are good with numbers. They would have made Webb manage their finances. And he built this ship? Kryn asked. Or helped design it? Sarah pulled up more files. Look. Material purchases 8 years ago. Authorized by Webb's account codes. Small amounts. Nothing that would attract attention. But over time, it adds up to enough material to build a ship. They kept searching. Sarah focused on finding any mark Webb might have left. Something human. Something the Syndicate wouldn't notice. She found it in a maintenance corridor. Scratched into a bulkhead. Barely visible. A series of numbers. At first, they seemed random. Then Sarah realized they were in Base 12. Vryn mathematics. Diego converted them. The result was a coordinate system, not for space, for locations inside the ship. The first coordinate led them to a sealed chamber behind a false panel in the engineering deck. It took Diego an hour to cut through safely. Inside, they found a small room, empty except for a holographic projector. Sarah activated it. A human face appeared, middle-aged, tired eyes, but with a spark of defiance. Marcus Webb. If you're watching this, you're human, the hologram said. The Vryn would never find this room. They think too directly. But you think like I do. You see patterns they miss. The hologram smiled. It was not a happy expression. The Syndicate took everything from me. My freedom, my life. They made me manage their stolen wealth, So I built them a ship. They thought it was a failure. Too heavy, too inefficient. They hated it. Perfect. Webb's image gestured around the empty room. The fortune isn't in the ship, he said. The ship is the fortune. Every plate of armor, every support beam, every section of hull plating. I sourced materials they didn't recognize. Rare elements, things that look worthless to scanners, but are worth billions if you know how to extract them. Sarah felt her breath catch. Diego cursed softly. Corinne's antenna went completely rigid. I used human metallurgy techniques, Webb continued. Bonding methods the Vryn consider primitive. They scanned this ship 100 times and saw junk. They never looked deeper. Why would they? It's just a poorly built human design. The hologram's expression hardened. I'm dead by the time you see this. The Syndicate doesn't let slaves retire, but I made sure my work would outlive them. This ship is my revenge, and my legacy. The materials are all legal. I purchased them before they killed me. Salvage law applies. Whoever owns this ship owns everything I built into it. Webb leaned closer. They'll come for you when they realize what you have. The Syndicate might be gone, but their families remain. They're allies. They'll want this fortune. This is human ingenuity, human patience, human spite against those who tried to break us. The hologram flickered. Good luck. And remember, the worthless ship hides the priceless secret. That's the most human thing of all. The image vanished. The room fell silent. Sarah stood frozen, her mind racing through the implications. Billions in materials, hidden in plain sight, purchased legally by a dead man, owned by whoever bought the ship. Owned by her, for 7 credits. Diego broke the silence. We need to start extraction immediately. Agreed. Kern clicked. Before others learn. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Sarah's tablet showed incoming vessels, fast attack craft, Vryn signatures. Too late, she said. They ran for the bridge. Sarah pulled up the external cameras. 3 ships approached Kepler Station, heading directly for their docking bay. They weren't trying to hide. A communication request came through. Sarah accepted it. A Vryn female appeared on screen. Her scales were marked with Syndicate tattoos. Human, she said. You have something that belongs to my family. The Forgotten Price was built with Syndicate resources. It is ours by right. I bought it legally, Sarah said. You bought garbage. We want our inheritance back. Surrender the ship and live. Refuse and die. The connection cut. On the scanner, the attack ships launched from their carrier. They were coming fast. We can't fight them, Diego said. Sarah's mind worked through options. They couldn't fight, couldn't run, not while docked, couldn't hide. The ship was too valuable to destroy. But if she gave it up, Webb's legacy died. His revenge failed. Then she remembered something Webb said, thinking differently. Diego, can you extract any materials while we're being pursued? Some. The less integrated components. Why? Because we're not surrendering, we're running, and we're going to make them chase us through every system between here and Earth if we have to. She accessed the ship's controls. The Forgotten Price might look outdated, but Webb had hidden modern engines inside. They had power. Kern, release the docking clamps. Diego, get to engineering. I need whatever you can pull from the ship's structure without killing life support. This is insane, Diego said, but he was already moving. Sarah strapped into the captain's chair. She was a revenue investigator, not a combat pilot. But she was human, and she was sitting in a ship designed by a human who'd spent 8 years planning revenge. Maybe some of his ingenuity had rubbed off on the controls. The Forgotten Price lurched free from Kepler Station. Behind them, Vryn attack ships accelerated. Sarah pushed the engines forward. The hunt had begun. The Forgotten Price shook as Sarah pushed the engines to maximum. Behind them, 3 Vryn attack ships closed the distance. Their weapons charged, ready to disable rather than destroy. They wanted the ship intact. They're faster than us. Diego's voice came through the intercom from engineering. I know, Sarah said. She angled toward the nearby asteroid field. It was a debris field left from old mining operations. Thousands of rocks, from pebbles to small mountains, all tumbling through space. You're not serious, Kern said from the weapons station. They won't expect it. Vrin tactics are direct. They'll think we're panicking. Aren't we? Diego asked. Sarah didn't answer. She was too focused on the approaching asteroids. The first rocks appeared on her scanner. She adjusted course, diving between two massive chunks of stone. The attack ships followed. They were more maneuverable, designed for combat. The Forgotten Price was a heavy cruiser, built for different purposes, but Sarah was counting on that. Diego, how's the extraction going? I've identified the first components. They're integrated into the hull support structure. Webb was clever. He used valuable materials for essential systems. Can you remove them without compromising the ship? Some, maybe. I'm working on it. The Forgotten Price scraped past an asteroid. Alarms screamed. Sarah ignored them. She'd spent years analyzing flight patterns, studying how different species flew. Humans flew erratically when compared to most aliens. What seemed like panic to them was actually improvisation. The attack ships tried to flank her. Standard Vrin tactics. Pin the target, force surrender. Sarah dove down, relative to the plane of the asteroid field. One pursuer followed. The other two angled to cut her off. Weapons? Sarah asked Kern. This ship was never properly armed. Point defense only. Webb probably stripped the weapon systems to sell the materials. An explosion rocked the ship. The Vrin had fired a warning shot. Next one won't miss, Kern reported. Sarah's hands moved across the controls. She'd been reading Webb's logs during the flight preparation. The human accountant had left notes. Personal observations. She thought they were just ramblings of a prisoner. Now she understood. Webb had been teaching, leaving lessons. One note stuck in her mind. Aliens fly like they think. Straight lines. Logical paths. They can't imagine choosing the stupid option. Sarah chose the stupid option. She turned directly toward the largest asteroid in range. Sarah, Diego shouted. Trust me. The asteroid filled the view screen. It was the size of a small moon, pockmarked with old mining tunnels. The Vrin ships followed, probably thinking she'd turn at the last second. Sarah didn't turn. She aimed for one of the tunnels. Those tunnels weren't meant for ships this size, Kern said. I know. The Forgotten Price plunged into darkness. The tunnel walls scraped the hull on both sides. More alarms, more damage warnings. Behind them, the attack ships broke off, too dangerous to follow in the narrow space. Sarah checked her scanner. The tunnel was old, unstable. It branched in multiple directions. She took random turns, letting human intuition guide her, rather than logic. After 10 minutes of winding through the asteroid's interior, she found an exit. The ship burst back into open space on the other side of the rock. Status? Sarah asked. Hull damage non-critical, Kern reported, but we lost some armor plating in the tunnels. Diego? Still working. I've extracted our first sample. Sarah, you need to see this. She set the ship to autopilot and headed to engineering. Diego stood next to a work table. On it sat a piece of metal, about the size of a book. It looked ordinary. Gray, slightly rough texture. This was part of the inner hull support, Diego said. I scanned it. Look. He showed her the analysis. The metal was a layered composite. 7 different rare elements bonded together, using a technique called cold fusion lamination. Each element alone was moderately valuable. Together, processed this way, they were worth a fortune. This one piece? Sarah asked. About 50,000 credits, after processing. How much of the ship is like this? Diego gestured around engineering. From what I can tell, most of the internal structure. Webb built the entire ship from composites like this. He made them look like cheap metal to standard scanners. Only detailed analysis reveals the truth. If the ship was mostly composed of these materials, Webb hadn't just hidden a fortune, he'd built one. Keep extracting what you can, she said, carefully. We need to keep the ship functional. She returned to the bridge. The scanner showed the Vryn ships had found them again. They were closing in. I need options, Sarah said. Kern's antenna twitched. We cannot outrun them, cannot outfight them, and there are no more convenient asteroids. Sarah thought about Webb, about his notes, about 8 years of planning revenge. He'd been one human against an entire criminal organization. He couldn't fight them directly, so he'd done what humans do best. He'd been creative. Open a communication channel, Sarah said. Wide broadcast. Every ship in range. What are you doing? Kern asked. Taking a page from Webb's playbook. If we can't win alone, we change the game. Sarah spoke clearly. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen of Earth. I'm broadcasting from the Forgotten Price, formerly of the Vryn Syndicate. To all salvagers, bounty hunters, and treasure seekers in range, this ship is worth approximately 40 billion credits in rare materials. Cran's antenna went completely rigid. Sarah, the ship is constructed from exotic composites hidden using human metallurgy techniques. I can provide scanner readings to verify. First ship to help me reach Earth space gets 10% of the total value. She sent the scan data Diego had collected, the readouts showing the true composition of the hull materials. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her scanner lit up like a festival. Ships began changing course from all over the sector. Salvage crews, independent operators, corporate claim jumpers. Everyone who'd seen the broadcast and believed it. You just painted a target on us, Cran said. I gave everyone else a reason to fight over us. Look, the 3 Vryn attack ships were trying to close in for the capture. But now other ships were arriving. A Gathrian salvage cruiser moved to intercept. 2 corporate vessels from different companies eyed each other and the Forgotten Price with equal suspicion. Sarah's communicator exploded with incoming calls. Everyone wanted to make a deal. Everyone wanted their share. This is the Gathrian vessel Heavy Returns, one transmission said. We claim salvage rights under sector law. Negative, another voice cut in. Meridian Corporation filed claim codes while you were still sleeping off your last drink. Arguments erupted across every frequency. Ships jockeyed for position. The Vryn attackers found themselves facing a dozen potential enemies. Sarah navigated through the chaos. She made promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Offered deals she had no authority to make. Kept everyone arguing with each other instead of shooting. Diego's voice came through her earpiece. I'm reading a massive power signature. Something big just arrived. Sarah checked her scanner. A new ship had entered the area, much larger than the others. The design was distinctive. Galactic Commerce Authority, a bureaucratic enforcement vessel. This is Authority Cruiser Meridian's Justice, a board voice announced. All vessels are ordered to stand down. This matter is now under Commerce Authority jurisdiction, until proper legal claims can be assessed. The chaos paused. Nobody wanted to fight the authority. They had the backing of a dozen major governments. They also had really big guns. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. The authority wasn't exactly friendly, but they followed rules, laws, procedures, human concepts that she could work with. Lieutenant Commander Chen, the authority voice said, you will maintain current position and prepare for boarding inspection. Understood, Sarah said. The Vryn attack ships didn't leave. They couldn't, not without admitting defeat. But they also couldn't attack with the authority watching. Stalemate. Sarah leaned back in the captain's chair. Her hands were shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion in its wake. That was brilliant or insane, Kron said. I haven't decided which. Maybe both, Sarah admitted. Diego came to the bridge, carrying more extracted samples. I've pulled out enough material to prove the ship's value. But Sarah, there's something else. I found another sealed chamber, Another message from Webb. What does it say? I don't know. It's encrypted, but the encryption is human style. I think it's meant for you specifically. Sarah looked at the samples, at the scanner showing the circling ships, at the 7-credit purchase that had turned into something much bigger. Webb had planned this, all of it. He'd built a ship that looked worthless, but was priceless. He'd hidden it among the Syndicate's fleet, knowing that one day someone would see through the disguise. He'd bet on a human finding it, on human curiosity, on the human tendency to see value where others saw waste. 7 credits, the price of a coffee in some Earth cities. Webb had turned it into the most valuable purchase in recent history. But he'd also left more secrets, more messages, more pieces of the puzzle. The Authority ship was approaching. Sarah would have to navigate legal claims, territorial disputes, and probably a dozen forms of litigation. But for now, she had time. Show me the encrypted message, she said. Diego handed her the data chip. Sarah looked at it, then at the view screen showing the chaos outside. Webb's revenge was still unfolding. And she had a feeling the best parts were yet to come. The Forgotten Price sat in neutral space, surrounded by ships. Sarah counted 43 vessels on her scanner. Salvage crews, corporate claim jumpers, bounty hunters, and 3 Vrin family cruisers all waited. In the center, the Galactic Commerce Authority vessel maintained order through the simple presence of its weapons. Sarah sat in a conference room aboard the Authority ship. The room was designed for multiple species. Chairs of different sizes, air mixtures that satisfied most biochemistries, temperature set to a compromise that made everyone slightly uncomfortable. Across the table sat representatives from a dozen different groups. All of them wanted the Forgotten Price. All of them had lawyers. The ship was legally purchased, Sarah said for the 5th time. She was tired. The negotiations had been going for 6 hours. At a fraudulent price, the Gathrian salvager argued. 7 credits for a 40 billion credit asset suggests deliberate concealment of value. Or it suggests everyone else failed to recognize the value, Sarah countered. Ignorance isn't fraud. A Meridian Corporation lawyer clicked their mandibles. Our company filed salvage claims on all Syndicate assets. The Forgotten Price is included. Your company filed claims on listed assets. This ship was listed as worthless scrap. Irrelevant, the claim stands. Sarah looked at the Authority mediator. The being was a qual, a species known for their patience and love of regulations. Their 3 eyes blinked in sequence. This is complex, the mediator said. We must consider multiple legal frameworks. Salvage law, property rights, inheritance laws. Inheritance? Sarah asked. The mediator gestured. A new figure entered the conference room. Sarah felt her breath catch. It was a Vrin female, elderly by their standards. Her scales were faded, but marked with intricate patterns. Family markings. Important family. I am Matriarch Vess, the Vrin said. Her voice was cold and controlled. The Forgotten Price was built using Syndicate resources. My family controlled that Syndicate branch. Therefore, genetic inheritance law applies. The ship was built by a human named Marcus Webb, Sarah said, not by your family. Webb was Syndicate property. His work belonged to us. Sarah felt anger rise. People aren't property. Human morality is not law, Vess said. Webb worked for the Syndicate. Under Vrin law, his creations belong to his employer's inheritors. The mediator's eyes blinked again. This is indeed complex. We require time to research precedents. While you research, I'm paying dock fees, the Gathrian growled. Sarah pulled out her tablet. She'd been working on Webb's encrypted message during the negotiations. The encryption was clever, but human-patterned. She'd broken it an hour ago. What she found was remarkable. I have documentation, Sarah said, from Marcus Webb himself. Everyone stopped talking. She transmitted the files to the conference room display. Webb kept detailed records. Every material purchase, every credit spent. He used his own accounts, money he'd saved before the Syndicate took him. The display showed transaction records. Thousands of small purchases over 8 years. Each one legal. Each one documented with meticulous care. Webb bought everything legally, Sarah continued. He used his position to make purchases on the Syndicate's behalf. But he paid for the materials himself. He kept every receipt, every authorization, every proof of ownership. Matriarch Vess leaned forward. Impossible. We would have noticed. Would you? He spread purchases across hundreds of suppliers. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger audits. The Syndicate thought he was buying cheap materials for a worthless ship. They were right about the ship being worthless to them. Wrong about the materials. Sarah pulled up more files. Webb also filed legal documents, wills, property transfers. Under galactic salvage law, his legal estate passes to whoever salvages his final work. The forgotten price was his final work. I salvaged it. Therefore, I inherit his estate. The Meridian lawyer clicked again. This doesn't address our company's claims. Your claims are on Syndicate property. This was never Syndicate property. Webb owned it. The Syndicate just kept it in their docks because they thought it was broken. The room erupted in arguments. Different species shouting in different languages. The mediator tried to restore order. Sarah sat quietly. She'd laid out the legal case. Webb had taught her through his files. Humans understood bureaucracy. The tedious process of making sure every detail was recorded and legal. It was a very human strength. Aliens often mocked it, called humans obsessed with paperwork. But right now, that obsession was the only thing standing between Sarah and losing everything. The arguments continued for another hour. Then Matriarch Vess raised her hand. The room fell silent. She commanded that kind of respect. I wish to speak with Chen, privately. The mediator considered. Unusual but acceptable. We will recess. The room cleared. Sarah found herself alone with the Vryn matriarch. Vess studied her with old, intelligent eyes. You knew Webb? Sarah asked. No, but I know of him now. I have read his files, his records. Very thorough, very human. He was a slave. Your family enslaved him. Not my family directly. A subsidiary operation. But yes, this is true. Vess's scales shifted color slightly. Sarah didn't know Vryn biology well enough to read the meaning. I came here expecting to reclaim property, Vess said. Instead, I find a mystery. Webb was taken 8 years ago. A random capture. One human among thousands the Syndicate processed. Processed? That's a cold word for slavery. Yes. Vess met Sarah's eyes. I have learned something about Webb. Something not in his official records. Something I discovered through family archives. She transmitted a file to Sarah's tablet. It was a genetic analysis. Webb was tested when captured. Standard procedure. We categorize slaves by genetic markers, useful for medical purposes and tracking. Sarah read the file. Her eyes widened. Webb was Vryn, Vess said quietly. Genetically partially, one parent was Vryn, the other human. He was a hybrid child. What? Rare but possible. Webb was taken from a colony world 60 years ago as an infant. Never knew his Vryn heritage. But the genes are clear. Sarah stared at the data. Why tell me this? Because under Vryn law, genetic inheritance applies to all descendants. If Webb was part Vryn, his blood relatives have claim to his estate. I am his grandmother. Sarah felt the ground shift under her feet. You're claiming the ship through family rights. I could, but I have also read Webb's final message, the encrypted one you decoded. I saw it before you transmitted the legal files. Sarah tensed. Webb's final message contained more than just legal documents. It contained his story, his pain, his anger at being enslaved, his determination to strike back. He did not know about his Vryn blood, Vess said. He died thinking he was fully human. Perhaps that is merciful. But I know the truth. My daughter had a child with a human traitor 60 years ago. The Syndicate took that child during a raid. They never checked genetic markers carefully back then. The matriarch's scales shifted again. I lost my daughter to illness 40 years ago. I thought I had no descendants. Then I found Webb's genetic file today. And now he's dead, Sarah said. Yes, killed by the Syndicate, by my family's organization. I cannot change that. I cannot apologize to him, but I can make a choice now. Vess stood. She was old, but moved with dignity. Webb built something remarkable. He used human ingenuity to strike back at his oppressors. He hid a fortune in plain sight. He documented everything with human precision, and he designed it so that only someone who thought like him could find it. What are you saying? I am saying that I could fight you in court. Genetic inheritance is a strong claim under Vryn law. But Webb was raised human, thought human. His revenge was human. I think he would want another human to benefit from his work. Sarah stood as well. You're giving up your claim? On one condition. Webb's final message mentioned evidence, proof of Syndicate operations, names, accounts, crimes. He collected it all. I want that information. Why? Vess's eyes hardened. Because the Syndicate still exists. Scattered, hidden, but alive. I want it dead, truly dead. My family profited from suffering. I cannot undo the past, but I can help burn what remains. Sarah considered. Webb's files contained devastating evidence. Transaction records, communications, proof of crimes across a dozen systems. It could destroy what remained of the Syndicate network. If I give you this evidence, you'll withdraw your claim to the ship? Yes, and I will support your salvage rights in the mediation. Vryn legal support carries weight. Others will hesitate to fight if a family matriarch backs your claim. Why should I trust you? Vess was quiet for a moment. Because I read my grandson's words. He spoke of hope, of leaving something good behind, despite the evil done to him. I want to honor that. The Vryn way would be to take everything by force, but maybe the human way is better. Sarah pulled up the encrypted files, Webb's evidence, his final gift. He'd meant it as revenge, but maybe it could be more. She transferred the data to Vess. Use it well, Sarah said. Vess accepted the files. I will. The mediation resumes in 1 hour. When it does, I will announce my position. The matriarch left. Sarah sat alone in the conference room. Outside the window, the forgotten price floated among the circling ships. 40 billion credits worth of materials, built by a man who'd suffered for 8 years to create his revenge. But Webb had been part Vryn, human-raised, but genetically connected to the people who'd enslaved him. What would he think about that? Would it matter to him? Sarah looked at his final message again. The words he'd written were defiant, but not hateful, angry, but not blind. Webb had understood that revenge alone wasn't enough. He'd wanted something to survive him, something meaningful. Maybe Vess was right. Maybe the human way was better. The mediation resumed. Vess announced her withdrawal and support for Sarah's salvage claim. The room was shocked. Without Vryn opposition, the corporate lawyers lost their strongest argument. The Gathrian salvagers grumbled, but backed down. By the end of the day, the Commerce Authority mediator made a ruling. The forgotten price belonged to Sarah Chen as legal inheritor of Marcus Webb's estate. 43 ships dispersed, disappointed. The only vessel that remained was an Earth registry ship. Sarah had called for backup. She stood on the bridge of the forgotten price, looking at the stars. Diego and Kern joined her. What now? Diego asked. Now we take this ship apart, Sarah said. Carefully. We extract every valuable component Webb put into it. And we decide what to do with 40 billion credits. That's a lot of credits, Kern observed. Yes, Sarah agreed. Too many for one person. Webb built this ship using patience, intelligence, and spite. Maybe we can use it for something better. Something that honors what he wanted to leave behind. Diego smiled. You have an idea. I'm working on it. But first, I want to read everything Webb left. All his notes, all his messages. I want to understand him better. She looked at the 7-credit receipt, still saved on their tablet. The best investment she'd ever made. Because of what it represented. A human accountant had turned slavery into rebellion. Turned worthless metal into priceless treasure. Turned 8 years of suffering into a legacy. Sarah intended to make sure that legacy mattered. The dismantling bay was enormous. The forgotten price sat in the center, held by docking clamps and surrounded by specialized equipment. Sarah stood on an observation platform, watching teams of engineers carefully remove sections of the ship's hull. 3 months had passed since the mediation. 3 months of careful work. Diego led the extraction teams. They developed techniques to separate Webb's composite materials without damaging them. Each piece revealed more of his genius. Layer 17, Diego reported through the comm. Still finding new materials. This section has osmium-iridium bonding, worth about 2 million credits per square meter. Sarah made a note on her tablet. The total value kept climbing. Current estimate, 43 billion credits. And they were only halfway through the dismantling. Kern approached her on the platform. The Vethian engineer carried a sealed container. We found something in the ship's core. Something else. Sarah took the container. Inside was a data storage device. Old-fashioned. Designed to last for centuries without power. Where was it? Buried in the main reactor housing. Surrounded by radiation shielding. Webb went to great lengths to preserve it. Sarah connected the device to her tablet. It contained files. Massive amounts of data. She opened the first folder and caught her breath. Music. Human music from Earth. Classical, jazz, rock, electronic. Thousands of recordings. The next folder held art. Paintings scanned in perfect detail. Sculptures photographed from every angle. Digital art created across human history. Literature, scientific papers, historical documents, cultural records, philosophy, poetry. It's an archive, Sarah said quietly. Webb collected human culture. Karan's antenna twitched. Why hide it in the reactor core? His words were careful, measured. He was afraid, Sarah said. Afraid that humans were losing their identity as we integrated into galactic society. He thought we were giving up too much of ourselves to fit in with alien cultures. She kept reading. Webb had spent 8 years collecting this data. He'd used his position to access human networks. Downloaded everything he could find. Art that might be forgotten. Music that was falling out of style. Stories that were being replaced by alien equivalents. This is his real treasure, Sarah realized. Not the money. This. Diego joined them on the platform. What did you find? Sarah showed him the archive. Diego scrolled through the files, his expression shifting from curiosity to wonder. This is comprehensive. This is our entire cultural history. Everything from cave paintings to modern digital art. Webb wanted to preserve it, Sarah said. He built a 40 billion credit ship to hide our cultural memory. Kern clicked thoughtfully. The monetary value gets attention, but the cultural value is priceless. Sarah looked at the partially dismantled ship, the worthless vessel that had hidden so much. She thought about Webb, about a man who'd been enslaved, who'd lost his freedom, who'd spent 8 years surrounded by aliens who'd tried to break him. He hadn't just built a weapon of revenge. He'd built an ark. I know what we're doing with the money, Sarah said. The foundation was established 6 months later, the Marcus Webb Cultural Preservation Foundation. Its mission was simple: preserve and protect the cultural heritage of all species across the galaxy. The announcement drew attention from across known space. Sarah stood at a podium on Earth, with representatives from a dozen worlds watching. The Foundation will maintain archives, Sarah explained. We'll document languages, art, music, traditions, anything that makes a culture unique, and we'll make it all freely available. A reporter asked, "Why all species? Webb was human. Why not just preserve human culture?" Sarah smiled. Because Webb understood something important. Oppression doesn't just destroy bodies. It destroys culture, identity, the things that make us who we are. The Syndicate tried to erase Webb's humanity. He fought back by preserving it. We're extending that fight to everyone. Matriarch Vess attended the ceremony. She'd become an unexpected ally. The evidence Sarah had given her had exposed 17 Syndicate operations. Galactic authorities had made hundreds of arrests. The organization was truly dying now. Webb would approve, Vess said after the announcement. He spent 8 years being human in a place that wanted him to be nothing. He preserved what they couldn't take. You never got to know him, Sarah said. But I know his work. I know his choices. That tells me enough. Vess's scales shifted to a color Sarah had learned meant respect. He was more human than Vryn, but he was brilliant regardless of genetics. The Foundation's first acquisition was Webb's archive. It became the core of a massive library. Within a year, other species began contributing. A Gathrian tribal confederation donated their oral histories. A Vethian hive sent recordings of their mating songs, which were considered sacred. Even Vryn families contributed cultural materials. Sarah discovered something unexpected. Everyone feared cultural erosion. Every species worried that galactic integration meant losing something essential. Webb had tapped into a universal concern. The Foundation grew. It established facilities on 12 worlds. It employed hundreds of archivists, anthropologists, and cultural specialists. It became a neutral ground where species could preserve and share what made them unique. Sarah visited the main archive regularly. It was housed in a building designed to last millennia. Climate-controlled, radiation-shielded, protected by redundant systems that Webb himself would have appreciated. 2 years after buying the forgotten price, Sarah stood in the archive's central vault. Diego was with her. They looked at a special display. The 7-credit receipt, framed and preserved. Beside it, Webb's final message played on loop for visitors. The worthless ship hides the priceless secret, Webb's hologram said. That's the most human thing of all. Do you regret it? Diego asked. 40 billion credits. You could have kept it all. Sarah shook her head. Webb didn't build that ship for money. He built it to survive. To make sure something good came from his suffering. The money was just the means. Still, 7 credits to 40 billion. That's quite a return. The real return is this, Sarah gestured around the archive. Cultures preserved, knowledge protected, species learning to value what makes them different instead of being ashamed of it. They walked through the archive halls. Each section represented a different species. Human art hung next to Vryn mathematical sculptures. Gathrian stone carvings stood beside Vethian bioluminescent displays. Sarah stopped at the human section. Webb's music played softly. His collected art covered the walls. His literature filled the shelves. He never knew he was part Vryn, Sarah said. He died thinking he was fully human. Do you think it would have mattered? Diego considered. I think Webb defined himself by his choices, not his genetics. He chose to be human, to think human, to preserve humanity. The DNA didn't make that choice. He did. Sarah thought about that, about identity, about the choices that define us. The Foundation continued to grow. 5 years after its founding, it had documented over 2,000 cultural traditions that were at risk of being forgotten. It had saved languages spoken by only a handful of individuals. It had preserved art forms that were dying out. Sarah received a message from Earth's Revenue Investigation Division. They wanted her back. Promotion, better pay, important work. She declined. I already have important work, she told her former supervisor. She did occasionally take on investigation cases. Her reputation for finding hidden value had spread. But she was selective. She chose cases that interested her, problems that needed human perspective. One day she received a message from an unexpected source. A young Vrin, recently graduated from an academy. The message was formal, but carried an undercurrent of emotion. I read about Marcus Webb, about the Foundation, about the forgotten price. I am studying human culture. I want to understand why my people hurt yours. I want to know how one human turns suffering into something beautiful. Can we meet? Sarah scheduled the meeting. The young Vrin's name was Kess. She was earnest, intelligent, and genuinely curious about human thinking. My family was Syndicate adjacent, Kess explained. Not directly involved, but we benefited from their crimes. I cannot change the past, but I want to understand what we did wrong, what we can do better. Sarah showed her the archive, Webb's collection, the evidence of what one human had preserved, despite everything. Webb understood something important, Sarah said. Revenge alone doesn't build anything, it just destroys. But preservation creates something that outlasts the pain. Kess studied Webb's notes, his meticulous documentation, his careful planning. This is very human, Kess said. My people would have fought directly, or given up. We wouldn't have the patience for this. Every species has strengths, Sarah said. Humans are good at patience, at seeing long-term patterns, at finding value in unlikely places. Like a 7-credit ship? Sarah smiled. Exactly like that. 10 years after the auction, Sarah returned to Kepler Station. The salvage yards were still there, still selling seized assets and decommissioned ships. She walked through the auction hall. Different faces now, different lots, but the same energy, the same hunger for profit. She thought about standing here a decade ago, watching aliens mock a worthless ship, making a 7-credit purchase that changed her life. The auctioneer recognized her. Commander Chen, looking for another bargain? Just visiting. That forgotten price purchase is legendary now. Every salvager in the sector knows the story. Some of them spend fortunes scanning worthless ships, hoping to find another Webb treasure. They won't, Sarah said. Why not? Because Webb was unique. He had 8 years to plan. 8 years to be angry and creative and patient. You can't replicate that. You can't find that kind of opportunity in a market. It only happens when someone turns suffering into art. She left the station. Her ship was docked nearby. A modest vessel. Nothing special, but it was hers, purchased with honest work rather than a lucky gamble. The Foundation's main archive sent her regular updates. New acquisitions, new species joining, new cultural materials preserved. Webb's archive had grown. Other humans had donated materials. The collection now spanned human history from prehistoric times to the present day. Future generations would know who they were, where they came from, what made them human. Sarah thought about Webb sometimes. About a man she'd never met, but felt she knew. A man who'd been enslaved, but never broken. Who'd built a 40 billion credit ship and hidden it as junk. Who'd preserved an entire culture while plotting revenge against his oppressors. She kept the 7-credit receipt. Not the framed copy in the museum, her personal copy. It was on her tablet, along with Webb's final message. Sometimes late at night, she'd read his words again. The worthless ship hides the priceless secret. That's the most human thing of all. Sarah understood now. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to let suffering be the end of the story. Webb had turned pain into preservation, slavery into salvation. 7 credits into a legacy that would outlast empires. That was the real secret. Not the materials hidden in the hull, not the fortune disguised as junk. The secret was simple. Humans see value where others see waste. We find possibilities in impossible situations. We turn the worthless into the priceless through patience, creativity, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. Webb had proven that. Sarah had honored it. The Foundation preserved it. And somewhere in the galaxy, other humans were doing the same thing. Finding value, creating beauty, turning 7 credits into something that mattered. That was the most human thing of all.